Hello and welcome to Paula's Marathon Run Club with me, Paula Radcliffe.
And me, Christopher Thompson.
And we are now in episode 9. And our special guest this week will be Steve Cram. But this is your guide to how to run your marathon. And that will be London, of course, for very many of you, the 27th of April. Please don't forget to give us a follow on Apple and Spotify, to share us with your friends and running groups. We've shared with a lot of people here in Tokyo. And I've met a lot of people who've been listening here in Tokyo. So hope everybody that I met and shared their thoughts on the run club went well today and enjoyed the race. Don't forget to email your questions through to hello@paulasrunpod.com. So as I said, the Jaro Arrow will be joining us later on to give his tips and to give me a bit of ribbing. It was recorded before I came out here to Tokyo. Of course, world champion, Olympic silver medalist, part of the golden era in British running, now a running coach and commentator for the London Marathon, amongst many other events, and did finish the Comrades as well as several marathons. So we're going to discuss why prioritising duration over distance matters, what to expect before the London Marathon, and how to prep for those cues for the loos, to stay warm and to stay hydrated, and how to run conservatively in the first 5 to 6 miles. And Steve will offer his top tips on how to fall in love with Cutty Sark.
And why he's quite a good predictor.
Quite good. Today.
Quite good, yeah, referring to like the historical guess of what you may or may not do, which is he's not too far off the mark.
Well, I think you might have loaded the pressure on a little bit too much and planted that seed too much in my head. So certainly for me today, I wish I had gone off a little bit steadier. Things went a little bit pear-shaped when they announced to me before the race that I was the fastest in the field, on the women's field. So I would.
Hang on, you were on the start line at the front.
Can you run onto the start line at the front? And I said, no, I'll run and wave and then I'll go and hide at the back of that front start line. But yeah, wasn't ideal because, of course, I went off too fast.
You were slightly inside 20 minutes for the first 5K. Is that roughly about right on this? I'm looking at the app and the.
What I did was I spotted the 250 pacemakers and thought, oh, that's great. I'll just pop on behind them. And if I'm behind them, that's fine. And then Paul Freary, who writes for Athletics Weekly and is out here, came past me at one point. He said, they're running way too quick.
All right.
I said, yeah, that's kind of not what I want to hear now. So I went through, I tried to slow down, went through halfway in 1:24 still.
Right.
And then my foot started getting really sore. And the other problem that I had was I could not drink out of the cups at all. And Nicola, who's sitting next to me, I don't know if you had the same problem there.
I snuck a little bottle in.
Oh, did you? So I should have done that. I really should have done that.
Someone told me to because I brought.
She took her own bottle, which was smart, because I did just bring her in then without giving her the full introduction. This is Nicola Carragher. We're very, very happy that she has agreed to join us. Phenomenally doing in 8 months the 6-star medal. So she will complete in London the 6-star medal. Started with Berlin. And then is actually going to go to Tokyo on the 31st of August and get the 7-star as well. So,
and it's all for a good cause, right?
How long since you started running?
I ran when I was younger in school, but obviously just like cross country, never these distances. And then I did a little bit of running in my 20s. Again, not these distances. So last year in the summer, I was doing like a few 5Ks and I was getting into it, loving it. And then it just pinged in my head. When I was younger, I always, wanted to run a marathon. And I was like, I think I want to run a marathon. And Jamie's brother's got a running club. And I asked him his advice and he said, oh, do one of the World Majors? And I went, oh, what are they? And he said, well, when you complete them, you can tick them off and then you get the 6-star medal. So I goes to just look the programme up. And honestly, I just sees Berlin. And then I could finish this 6-star being in London. So I was like, oh, I could do that. And then I told Jamie when we were on holiday and he was like, what? He was like, no. He was going, it's too much pressure on yourself. And I was like, no, I really want to do it. And now he's looking at me and he's like, I literally can't believe you're doing them. And I was like, he took myself.
And this
is really well.
Family is. So he met a Polish couple on the metro here, and they've been having a ball going around all day, handing out gels to the athletes and just.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he actually said to me when I finished, when we were walking over the road, and he said, my calves are hurting me, and I went, what? And he went, no, I know, love, I know, and I went, what? Your calves are hurting you? And I was like.
There's certain things you get allowable on a race day when you've done a marathon. Is no one's allowed to talk about their own pain when you got your. You finished in roughly. We're still waiting for confirmation around 4:14.
that was what my Strava said, but obviously on the way the app goes,
I think it's still being updated and correlated. But so what did you both, I mean, you mentioned it just now, the weather. So what were the challenges that you kind of faced for today? Because you both had a similar, slightly quicker first half to the second half. How much was that the cause and how much was that kind of the weather and the heat and stuff and stuff like that for everyone?
I think for me, it was the downhill at the beginning and the fact that I started too quickly. So I did everything that I've spent all this podcast telling everybody not to do. And absolutely that was going through my mind the second half. I was thinking, you take your own advice, you idiot. So I needed to have done that. I think I shouldn't have worn the Alpha Fly Super shoes. Because they were too aggressive for my foot. And so then it started to get really sore. And it was actually quite hilly rolling in the second half, wasn't it?
Hilly a lot, yeah.
Like little hills. So on the course profile, it looks flat because as much as you were going up, you'd then come down the other side. So they're like bumps.
It was.
And there were a couple of hairpins, which I have to confess, on the second one, I did actually scream out in pain. So I hope there were no photographers on that one. And then it was quite windy, I thought, in some little bits.
Yeah.
In the second half.
So I was going to give your splits a little bit just to give perspective of what you do, if that's all right with you.
This is what not to do, everybody listening.
Well, no, it's fine. Because I think, again, we talk a lot about trying not to go too fast, but I think we can all be forgiven having a little bit of a slowdown. That's not, and again, with what with all the things you're talking about. And I would actually argue this is not anywhere near like the kind of hitting the wall, so to speak, that can happen. But you were like 1931 for the first 5k, 1958 for the up to 10k, 5k to 10k, roughly the same for 15. So halfway, sorry, my eyes have gone blurry, I'm so tired.
124, I think.
124. But then you kind of on the back half, you kind of averaged like a 21 to 22. So even your last kind of 5k was still 22 and a half. That is painful for a marathon, isn't it?
So a lot of people made that mistake today because even though I was struggling, I was still catching people and people were stopping and walking. And I did think 10k to go, I thought you might have to walk the last 5k.
Same,
Were you?
Yeah, it was tough out there. And in fact, Alison told me earlier, Steve's other half, who's going to come up later on. But she said that Herman Silva, who blew past me with about 10k to go and was going to run 2:54 on the dot, was actually 20 seconds in front of me at the end. Herman Silva is famously won the one of the couple of the New York race marathons and is still running at 57 and is like a little metronome knocking it off in that time. So even he must have slowed over that final 10k.
Yeah, again, I don't think either of you should be too harsh yourself because again, if sometimes when it's a tough day, it's a tough day. Even if you'd have gone out,
I was like
minutes slower.
And in New York, I was thinking, just finish this, just get it finished.
Yeah. At any point, I think the best way I can word this is, at any point did you go back to that inner Paula, that Paula of old running? When did you go to that place of like, even though you were running?
I counted, and now my 3 times to 100 was pretty much a K. No, it wasn't quite a K. I was just like, I was about 100 and then maybe 20 or so 200s and then maybe 20 seconds more just to get to a K.
Wow. Oh, right. Okay. So you were like, yeah.
So many times just to break it down. And just the other thing was just really going in my head to Steve Peters, like, okay, now you've done it now. You've screwed up. You've gone too quickly. What are you going to do now to get back in control of it? And I was like, okay, you just have to back off, just forget about times and just break it down into little chunks. So I started out breaking it into 5Ks and I did the little game with my gel. So I had my gel and I was going to take it at 25K and I was like, no, hang on to 28. And then 28 was up a hill and I thought there's no way I can take it up the hill. So then I said, right, wait till 30K. And I did have to stop at 28K because I was so bad at drinking that I actually had to down 3 cups of water standing still.
Well,
start running again. So that worked also. I probably should have done that earlier on because that was a big disaster not being able to get any fluid. I didn't feel dehydrated at the end, but my mouth was really dry and it was hard to get the gels to actually go down.
Well, yeah, once your mouth starts kind of almost cottony mouth, it's hard to get anything in.
Yeah.
So Nicola, how did you kind of mentally cope with those kind of tough stages, especially towards the end? What were your kind of strategies?
I gave Jamie my gels. So at the first, I'd always used gels. Well, I actually used sweets at first when I first
a lot of people do that.
And then because I got injured before Berlin, I was like, I don't want to hit that wall. I don't want to chance it. So I just took gels like with me. So I used them. But again, I'm not really a lover of them. So then I did the same for Chicago and with New York. And then this time I was like, you try these like carbs and electrolytes, like sachets. And I was thinking I'll put them in this bottle. And then it's the equivalent of 3 gels in this bottle.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd done. I took them, seen Jamie around the 10-mile mark, got them off him, another 2. You know, because sometimes you've got them all and they're all packed in you and you're running like waddling with all these gels all around you. So I took them off him, and then for the last hour I wanted the gels with the caffeine in it. I literally runs past him, waves at him on the 20-mile mark, and as I just went past I went, oh no, I forgot the gels. So I ran with no gels for the last hour, and at first I was fine, and then I've never had that where you get the cramp in your legs. I've always been quite good with getting the gels down or the energy, and I was panicking. I was looking around to see if they had anything, but there was nothing.
No.
I think around. Did you see the pickled something?
No.
Like there was like some sort of
bananas.
pickles. Yeah. Well, I'd missed them. So
Hang on, a jar of pickles.
It was like some pickle.
We're in Tokyo.
Onion or something like that.
Put like pickled things out on.
And I just looked and I went, no. And then there's like lovely people who were just standing on the road, and I'm thinking I was tempted, but I was like, no.
And they also put this thing out, and it's called Poco Sweat, and it's actually it's a hypertonic thing, but it's really sticky. And I was slowing down trying to get that, and I thought I was slowing down trying to drink. The guy behind me tripped into me and tipped the whole thing down my back.
Oh,
so I was like sticky all down my back.
The floor was all the floor's all sticky, like your trainers are like
everywhere.
They're like,
oh wow.
As you're like running until you run out of the space, so it's so thick and sticky. Yeah.
It's funny how you build up these memories of like uniqueness around different races around the world. Like you'll never forget that pickles at the end of a Tokyo.
Well, in the middle on the route.
I was in the middle even. Oh wow.
Yeah, there was they showed us like what you got on each station, and I think on one of the stations there was like doll-shaped pancakes, and I was like, I've never seen them. I wish I'd have seen them. I'd have buffed a few of them down.
What were your? I guess I want to ask what your both favourite your biggest learning from today, because again you text after the race about you've learned a lot, so what would be your thing as an ex-world record holder and done everything you've done in the marathon? What did you learn from this experience?
Well, I think I've got to change the shoes going into Boston for sure. I'm really hoping I can get up in the morning and walk, because when I'd finished I was sore, but and I was limping clearly like the last 10k, but I came across and sat down. And then when I went to because we had to walk to supposedly wait for the next bus, and luckily then we thought, no, we're just going to get an Uber. And I was hobbling, walking then. And then I sat down on the barrier in the middle of the road, and the Uber took about 15-20 minutes to arrive. I couldn't walk. I had to hop on one calf that's just run a marathon. I had to hop on that and hold on to Gary on the other side to be able to get into the taxi. And then when we got to the hotel and got out, we had to get a wheelchair. But then spent a lot of time, like a good hour and a half, in ice buckets and massaging, and managed to get it to the point where I can actually walk on it this evening. And I'm really hoping I can do tomorrow, because I need to walk through airports and fly home tomorrow. So big learning is that I don't think my foot is okay with the super shoes. And if it is, then it's the Vaporfly and not the Alphafly, because that was a little bit too aggressive for me. And maybe even I go to the trail shoe that I've been doing all of my training runs in and see if that works for me. And then absolutely way nicer to go out slower and finish faster.
And are we gonna a quick mention for your boy Raf as well?
We are. And then for your boy as well, huge congratulations to yourself and Gemma, and of course Theo, who's now big brother.
Yes.
To George James. Little nod to producer James, was that?
So anyone that says anyone that said, oh, my name's George or James, it's in mine, I go, yeah, that's why we picked it. Yeah. That's the reason.
Of course. And big shout out to Raf. His goal was top 25 and he finished 25th, and they got third team for the PACA region, which is the Provence-Alpes Côte d'Azur region. And it was a proper cross-country course. course, from a British person, it was muddy. So yeah,
Perfect.
he was really, really happy. And then probably even happier to get a little congratulations from Jamie Carragher. Massive Liverpool fan, as we've talked about. So that meant a lot to him. So, of course, everybody, we are now week 9. Things are starting to ramp up. I really hope that Steve helped with those tips to stay strong through this. But it is all about now, as we've talked about, consistency, isn't it, Tomo? And just making sure that you work those coping techniques. As Nicola and I found out today, having those coping techniques is really, really important out there. And maybe start thinking about some of those what ifs. What if this happens in the race? What am I going to do there? And start trying to work that into the training. And yeah, a little tip from my lessons today, maybe start thinking about racing shoes and find the one that's the really right one for you for race day.
I think the really nice thing about all of what we've been doing through this series, and hopefully through the advice we've been given, is, and I think a lot of elite athletes can fall into the trap of, we're trying to be perfect all the time. We're trying to make every decision correct. In reality, no matter how experienced you are and how things, you're just trying to make the best of any situation. And just part of the process is going, oh, I've learned this and don't do this next time, and like you have. And so I think what's been, I feel like, lovely is to show that we're all human, and it's all a journey that we're working together. We're all, like you and Nicola have discussed, the good things and the bad things of Tokyo Marathon running. And I think hopefully people can feel that this is a nurturing environment, and part of the beauty of a marathon is we're all in it together. We're all just trying to find a way, and we're all kind of trying to make the best we can of any situation. We all have our little ways of dealing with it. So I think, thank you for I think it's fair enough for me as a co-host with you on this, is from the audience, is thank you to you for being so raw and open with your experiences and not trying to sort of make out everything's all song and dance. It is, the reality of marathon is tough. And I think that's lovely.
It's going to be hard today.
Yeah, and I think that's lovely for everyone to hear that, and I think it's lovely for everyone to share that with you and what you're doing. So thank you as an audience member to you.
So now we have got much teased conversation with Crammy. Of course, he sets me up to run way faster than I'm actually capable of doing. And I'd probably put that into my head, but that's Crammy. He does that all the time. There'll be a lot of people listening who have sent in questions asking, should they gauge their marathon training according to time on your feet or to distance covered? Do you think it's better to go time on feet and just basically look at your watch, or to get more into actual, am I covering the exact marathon pace?
I think it's both, Paula. How I normally, particularly when I'm talking to people the sort of people that may be asking this question, I talk about time on the feet first. I think time on your feet, being able to kind of accept the duration of what you're doing and build yourself up mentally, physically to cope with what a marathon or perhaps even an ultra is going to give you. I think once you've got into that mode of, I'm comfortable with the amount of time I can devote to that, because that's the first question I always ask people. How much time have you got? I don't say how many miles a week do you think you can run? I go, how much time have you got? Because only after that, if someone says I can run 3 times a week and I've got an hour, or I can run 5 times a week and I can do 2 hours that day and I can do it, you can start to map out a bit of a program. Then after that, you can start to think about pace. You can start to think, okay, well, what can I do in that time? Is it just one long run at steady pace? Am I going to be doing some broken threshold? What can I do on the track? So there are lots of ways then to use that time on your feet. But I think you begin with that. You begin with the negotiation of how much time have I got? How much time could I devote to my preparation for whatever it is I'm going to do? And then you can start to kind of map out a little bit more structure to that and try and fit as many of the elements in. And people so often ask me, why do you look at a 9-10 days? Because we're all used to this 7-day week. Sunday's the long run, okay, great. That's very historical, but it doesn't always match people's lives. And if people have a different weekly set, and sometimes the weekend's a tough time, particularly if you've got families to look after and you've got kids who go and play football or swimming or all the rest of it. So there might be other times of the week. So I tend to go, okay, if you said to me I can run every other day, and I said there are 5 elements I want to get into your training. I want some long runs. I want some nice sort of steady runs. We're going to try and do some tempo. We might do a little bit of track work. We might do some hills. 5 different types of running, all working on different things. But if I've only got 3 days in the week because I'm running every other day, how am I going to fit all them in? So extending it to kind of a 10-day program means I've got a chance of fitting 3 or 4 different elements in. Time on your feet first, then you start to work out, how do I work in these different elements? And then out of that will come, what sort of pace should I be doing these things at? And then gradually that'll work towards what pace you're going to actually race or perform in.
One of the important things that we haven't yet talked about, we will do as we get closer to the race, and it's what do you do to keep warm, hydrated and fueled up in that time that you're waiting, let's say out on Blackheath, waiting for the start. And I know we've talked about little bits of tips and we touched on those, Tomo, and Steve's going to come from a slightly different perspective because he's absolutely right. The elites, as elites, we got spoiled. And for the masses out there, you are going to have to queue a long time for a toilet. You are going to have something that you're probably going to throw away. And it's either going to get donated to charities and go to a good home, or you're going to go with a bin bag, as Nell talked about, and you're going to cut out the sleeves of that and just make sure that you're staying warm and dry. But the biggest thing is that during that time, you do stay warm and dry, you stay comfortable, you warm up a little bit, and you keep on staying hydrated and staying fueled as well as possible.
And I would say if you have been, if it really has been impossible, like, because you can get so penned in and you spend a good 20 minutes before you even start moving, then use the first mile as a warm up.
Some people need to get there very early, and I perhaps wasn't one of those. And you like Tomo says, you're going to run 26 miles, so it's not like you need to be super ready to go when your start line goes. But you don't want to be panicking. So give yourself enough time. Just take some snacks with you, just in case for whatever reason you get sat around somewhere you don't want to be. And you get up into the park area, if that's depending on which start line you're on, but that's for the vast majority of people. But you're going to be walking and standing and walk because the waves move forward. So you're going to get little warm-ups. So there are opportunities to start your pre-race routine, if you like, before you get to the actual start line. And then, as Tomo says, first mile, just enjoy it. Take your pictures if you're into all that sort of stuff, but then just take a mile to get going.
Can I ask again, because we've been talking a lot, but I think one of the questions that I was quite keen to ask you, Steve, because it has come up on messages and stuff, specifically of asking a coach about breaking a 3-hour marathon. It's obviously quite a big thing for people to try and do, men and women, but it is a kind of a point that me and Paula have talked about, how things need to start. You need to start thinking a bit more structured and a bit more kind of about the sessions, what you're doing to get that, because it is a genuinely tough point. But as a coach, from your perspective, what kind of tips would you say to those that are asking that fairly often about breaking that 3-hour barrier, and how to go about that from a coaching perspective, and what kind of things to think about?
So 3 hours, we're in the 7-minute miling and they're thereabouts. So that's, to run that for 26 miles, you need to have some good structure to what you're doing, as you guys have obviously suggested. And I say this to a lot of people, but I think particularly in this area, I think you need to pay quite a lot of attention to your other distances. I always use this daft analogy. You want to run a quicker marathon, you run a quicker half marathon. You want to run a quicker half, you need to run a quicker 10. You want to run a quicker 10, you know where we're going with this. So, because people tend to ignore, all they get focused on is, I need to run 26 miles at 7-minute miling. Well, actually, yes, you do, but that's not really how you get to do it, by doing lots of running in what would be your race zone. You need to do a lot of running, in my view, a fair bit quicker than that. Now, it depends on what you're doing. And as long as I've done this with a few people, even in that zone, Tomo, where get them to concentrate on further down the scale and look at, how can I get you to run a bit quicker for 5K? And if we can do that, and some of the things we need to include in that, we can then build on that, coming back up the other way, to enable you to run 3-4 minutes quicker at a half marathon, maybe even a bit more, which then gives us a lot more of a buffer zone around the sort of pace. It's like a 1,500 meter race. We want to get to the bell, not halfway. We want to get to the bell feeling in control and okay. Third lap's going to be hard. Halfway is kind of okay, fine. Third lap is the psychologically difficult bit, because that's where you're starting to hurt. You're sort of on pace, but everything's telling you to slow down a little bit. Close enough to the finish to start mustering up your final effort. So the third lap is where it can all go a bit wrong. So if the third lap, then you get to the bell, and of course the bell is that bit where you suddenly psychologically can go, okay, I've only got a lap to go here. I can find something a little bit extra and hopefully you pick up your pace a bit. And if you think about it, when people are running marathons and things, we need to move that third lap right into mile 20 to 23 rather than mile 15 to 18, 19. So your training has to kind of be geared towards that, so that I know I'm going to be able to run 18 to 20 miles comfortably at the pace I want to. It's going to get hard after that, right? It's going to get harder. So I tried to say, look, therefore, what is now we can talk distances. So what is 13 miles look like? What does 10 miles look like? What does 6 miles look like? I think working back from, it's not about kind of necessarily just thinking, okay, if I do a lot of training, do a lot of miles, do a lot in that zone of, what's close to my race pace, then that's going to work. Because sadly, for a lot of people, it doesn't quite work out that way.
Presumably for comrades, because I do want to touch on that a little bit, because
Don't ask you what I did, because it ain't good advice.
I was more going to ask you about the psychological concentration part of it, because that's the bit I imagine that is the toughest part of it.
What's the distance of comrades?
55 miles. I had covered that distance a year before by accident, hadn't planned for it or anything. So when you asked me that question, Paula, that was with a group of guys who were in the UN peacekeeping force in Bosnia, former Yugoslavia. Come to the end of their tour, they'd asked me to go out and start them off on this challenge they were going to do. Run 6 miles with us. Yeah, it was all going to be on Army TV and everything. And I got into it, and then they wouldn't let me stop because they were kind of going, well, you're the international athlete, and we're going to do this 50. Anyway, we never know what our barriers are until we kind of are in a situation where we're asking ourselves to challenge that. If you'd said to me, even on that morning, by the way, Steve, today you're going to run 55 miles. I had planned to run 6 miles. The most I would have been running at that period would have been 8 to 10 miles maximum, maybe once every month. Yet 9.5 hours later, I was running into Sarajevo, arriving in the bombed out stadium where Torval and Dean had won their gold medal, having completed 55 miles with a bunch of armed forces guys who are, tough nuts. And it was hard, but it was no harder than I've sat and watched. What if some of the things you've done for 10 hours? Sometimes sitting on a plane for 10 hours is mind-numbingly boring. There's no physicality of it. So can you do anything for 10 hours? Yeah, probably. And if my life depended on it today, even if I had to go, it might take me 10 hours to get to Kielder from here, but if I could do it, because I'm that sort of person, which a lot of us are, where we just go, well, I'm doing it now. So the good thing about that, there wasn't anything about how long is it going to take. It was just, you're going to do it. Mm. So when we went a year later to do the real event, the only trouble was I'd got injured. So here's where the what's your motivation? So halfway through, I went there with this bad knee, so I hadn't really been able to run for 3 weeks. I wasn't sure we'd get through it. The first 10K was fine. I was running with another guy. We were raising money for charity, and I'm a much better runner than him, theoretically, but he trained really hard for it. And we get a 20K, the knee's really starting to stiffen up. And we had this agreement where we were going to walk all the feed stations. And there were a lot of them, which you'd expect. So walk, run, mile or two, walk, run, mile or two. And that was our strategy. But every time I started walking, my knee was getting stiffer and stiffer and stiffer, really bad. And at about mile 33, at the gym, my friend, I said, just keep walking, I'll catch you up, because you don't really want to keep stopping at that. So I go there, and as I'm coming back out of the loo, I went to dip under the rope back onto the course. And I sort of pushed my knee out, and I just heard this and I was like, really sharp, violent pain. And I went, I screamed out loud sort of thing. Everyone around me so Jim is 150 yards down the road or more, and he's walking. I'm going, Jim. You can't hear me. I start hobbling. Eventually he stops. I go, Jim. And he goes, oh my goodness, what's happened? I goes, Jim, I've absolutely bust my knee. I'm really sorry. I can't walk, never mind run. And I'm going to have to drop out. And he went, oh no, that's terrible. And we were in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, there was this very attractive young lady, funny enough, he'd been chatting to. Jim was that sort of bloke, he'd been walking along, chatting to all the other women. And he'd been telling her about me. Oh, my friend, he's in the top. He's a world champion, He's broke the world record. He's one of the most famous runners in the world. And, she didn't have a clue. So anyway, here's me come hobbling. I'm going to drop out. And she went, are you the famous runner? and you're going to drop out. And I went, no. I completed 55 miles with what I later found out was a torn ligament in my knee. I didn't run for a year afterwards out of pride. How sad is that? I hobbled
But
it.
it's actually something you can be proud of.
I'm glad that that lady challenged me to not stop. The easiest thing to do would have been to stop. The sensible thing to do would be to stop. And often, we push ourselves to do things because we've got lots of other reasons, and people will be running the marathon for very personal reasons. It'll be a challenge that they may be not sure if they can achieve. They've never done it before. They see other people doing it. And I'm a big believer in that when we doubt ourselves, when we see other people who seem to be not as capable perhaps, or maybe do look like us and think, well, hang on, if they can do it, so can I do it. And I think that's been the beauty of things like the London Marathon. When it got certainly televised over the years, it convinced a lot of people sitting on the sofa when the lovely Mad Sharples was coming in 6.5 hours, which these days she wouldn't be at the back, but in those days she was. And they go, well, if that pensioner from wherever she was from was able to do it, maybe I can do it. So I think you're right. Taking part in the Comrades Marathon, getting to the end of it, it's got nothing to do actually with my running career. It was just the type of person, I think, we all are the type of people who get attracted to go and do something like that. And there's something inside you just goes,
I've come all this way, I might as well get to the end. It's not the first time that you've hobbled to the end, is it? Because you did it in New York as well.
Pulled the car for 6 miles and your husband wasn't going to wait for me. So off he went. And I definitely tried to drop out that day. I couldn't find the medical tent. I was very embarrassed because, again, I had my name on my number and a lot of Brits in New York went, so were you crying? You're all right, getting going past. And again, a bit of pride, I guess. You can get into it. I mean, there are some injuries which are impossible to keep going on, but I was able to hobble around. And you know what, Paula? By hobbling around New York, I enjoyed it more than I might have done if I'd been trying.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the points.
Around. Yeah, you look around, you take in the atmosphere, you chat to people. And yeah, when I got to the end, I was a bit sore, but what the devil, it was great fun. And I think I enjoyed probably both of those events more because once I decided I was going to finish, you stop thinking about how fast you're running or how much you hurt.
That's my absolute mindset now. That's what I've missed, is that camaraderie in there. And to a certain extent, it's so much stronger in the middle of the mass field than it is at the front of the elite race in terms of the people around you keeping you going.
When you say in the middle of the mass field, that would be people running about 4.5 hours, Paula.
But the atmosphere is special.
You're going to be running like 2:45, aren't you?
No. If I could get close to that in Boston, maybe. Because I do think that for my foot, Boston is a little bit better because the way that my foot reacts, it likes a change in foot strike. So if I am going up and down hills and it's slightly changing, then that's better for my foot. Whereas if it's a flat, fast course, it's kind of very, very repetitive on that joint. I think if I can get through in one piece in Tokyo and look at it as a training run, then that's kind of what I'm hoping to build towards for Boston. I really have no idea because I still refuse to time my runs. So I'm doing my training. Since I retired, I've not timed anything. That's actually a lie. I have put the stopwatch on because I've done some sessions with Raf, who's now qualified to run his national cross country. And it's the first time he's got serious. So he started doing some reps and he got a training plan from his coach. And it said he had to do a 1K, 2K, 1500 rep in the forest. And so he came out and I said, right, we're going to learn some counting techniques now. So basically you're going to count in your head and it'll pass the time and you'll have to guess before I tell you how long you've done, how much you've done, roughly. So he got quite good at it. He was like, it must be nearly 3 minutes now, Mum, and it was 3:03. So he was learning that technique. But then, long story short, at the end, told his coach what he's done. And his coach said, well, what pace was he running at? I said, well, I don't know what pace we're running at. We're not looking at that. He just ran as hard as he could for 3.5 minutes, 7 minutes, and then 5 minutes. And we just did it like that. Because I think that coping technique will actually be valuable for him, but it also meant I didn't have to look too much.
See, this is the thing that is brilliant, I think, about in the running community in this world is like, and as you touched upon, Steve, when you mentioned this, that we're all capable within our own worlds of doing things far and above what we necessarily believe or think, and we can just turn our hand to a lot of things that we don't necessarily believe, and that's what makes running brilliant. But that whole conversation there was, again, the whole idea of Paula playing it down like that, and then you as a coach going, you're capable, because that's that kind of bouncing between a coach and an athlete. You believe you can do it.
Is it a certain thing that my body's no longer capable of doing? So I'm trying to kind of temper that and just enjoy it at the same time.
So let me ask both of you as athletes. So, I'm on the other side of the fence. I know what I was like as an athlete. So again, I'm not going to, the people I'm working with, there are people who will say, oh, I'm going to do this. It's going to be this. I'm going to, whatever. And in my head, I'm like, let's temper that a little bit or whatever. And then on other occasions with others, I might be having to go, come on, you can do this. You can, and the athlete is going, So were you in the relationship perhaps with your coaches, were you the one kind of going, no, I can do that? Or was it the coach going, no, come on, you can do this?
What I used to do was I tried to fish. So I would kind of underplay what I thought I could do to see if I could coach Mark or Alan to say, oh, actually, you can do this. Because I felt like, that kind of attitude of, I remember when I broke 27:30 for the first time with 10K. And at the time, it was, I think the British record was John Brown. Me and Mo were kind of going at who would get the British record first in terms of that mindset. And I was doing the 10K, and I remember I just had this feeling. I thought, I think I can break 27:30. I think I can. So whenever me and Mark, I would say 27:45 kind of thing. And I was waiting for him to kind of fish and go. And he kind of, it never quite came, yes, you can do that. But we had this kind of unspoken, but I always used to underplay it to see if the coach would overplay it. That was kind of my tactic anyway.
Yeah, I'm a believer that if you don't think you can do something, you probably won't. Because often, even if you don't articulate it either to your coach or anybody else, somewhere in there, you've thought, I can run 27:30. Paula thought she could run 2:13. You're kind of in that whole, because you're right, your coaches, I think the coach is there exactly as that, as a sounding board.
And in some essence, it's a little bit like a psychologist, in terms that sometimes if you talk to a sports psychologist or any kind of psychologist, they're basically going to get you to say out loud what is somewhere buried in your mind anyway. And so what a coach is doing is getting your body to be able to express the talent that you've got inside anyway. It's just getting it all out there. But for me, I think the biggest benefit of a coach is when you're really ready, is telling you to back off, because the athlete will always keep trying to add a little bit more. And it's just giving you that faith and that trust that when you're out there running around, you are on your own, but you're not on your own, because a lot of people have put a lot of effort in there. And I'm getting a bit deep here, but it is like, you can almost imagine when you've got a good, really strong relationship with your coach and you need that advice in the race, you can imagine what they would tell you, because you've been there in training and done it before with them on a bike or with them on the phone afterwards. And you can kind of pull in those nuggets that you need at that point in the race, almost as part of your coping strategy, because the coach has had it there. And the other really valuable point is when you're ill. And we've talked about that before, haven't we, Tomo? That the biggest value for a coach, because with an injury, it's easy. It either hurts or it doesn't. So you can either start back training or you can't. But with an illness, it's more gradual. And there are some points that you maybe can start back and get away with it, and some that you shouldn't. You should give it an extra day. And that, I think, is where having that sounding board of a coach or a significant other or just someone who knows you well is really important, to say, yeah, you're not well enough to go out yet, or yeah, you can go, but you've got to do it easy.
You're right. You both use the word psychologist, and I think because it is a relationship, and sometimes it's quite a distant one, sometimes it's a very close one, and that relationship changes from when you're coaching a youngster to somebody you meet when they're 31, and they've got their own thoughts and ideas. And so you have to be able, as a coach as well, to listen a lot. And then, as you said, try and, I think you're 100% right, both of you. The job of the coach is to get the best out of the individual, sometimes without them realizing it. And that's really the key to between you and the athlete. You try and explore what is possible, but no coach, if someone doesn't want to do a marathon, they're not going to do it, So there's it has to be it always is, I think, or it should be 100%. the athlete or the person, whoever you want to call them, is leading the thing. And the coach's job is to go, okay, let me help you do that. That's basically what you're trying to do.
So if you're listening and you're not wanting to do the marathon, maybe go and listen to another podcast because we're not in the right one there. You have to be wanting to do it, certainly.
When I first started going to the London Marathon, and I was doing stuff with Macmillan to begin with Macmillan Cancer Relief, and meet some runners the night before who were going to run, and chatting to people, a bit of excitement, nervous, first timers, what pace should I do, how should I go? And then I'd go and watch, and I'd often be somewhere around the finish later on. And I was always interested in this, people come around those last two corners when you get to Buckingham Palace. And the very last one, you turn and you're going back up the mall to the finish line. And the amount of people who were getting the jelly legs and collapsing, this happens at the front and, with 300 meters to go. And I'm going, wow, they're either been really, really good at just eking out, because all I was thinking was the physicality of it. Then when you realize it's nothing to do with that, the brain is an incredible thing. The mind is so strong that when you've decided you're going to do something, even if, as we've mentioned already on this, physically you've gone way beyond your preparation, what you should have been, all the training you could have done but didn't manage to do. But what will get you to the finish line is this idea that I told myself I was going to do it, I told my friends, or I'm raising money for charity, whatever. But the worst thing that can happen happens in races on the track, doesn't it? When you think it's finished. Mm-hmm. I think I'm at the finish line. And as soon as people get to that last little bit where I'm keep going, then all of a sudden I've done it, but you haven't. And as soon as the mind switches off from keep going, it is a physical thing. Of course it is. We've run out of energy, but I always find it amazing that so many people, it's literally the last half mile where that happens. They didn't overcook it and it's mile 21 or 23. And I used to talk to some people and they'd say exactly that. You said, I thought as soon as I saw the finish line, I thought, oh, thank goodness. And then all of a sudden I had nothing left. Have you ever got the end of a race and pipped on the line and the person who won goes and does a lap of honor? Yeah, well, great, full of energy. You get beat. You're running this by this much and you're flat out on the ground, aren't you? You've got nothing else to offer. You can't stand up. You've got nothing to offer, have you? And it's because your mind is in a different place to here. Yeah. You're full of elation and you're full of somewhere, you can jump up and down and wave your arms in the air and go and run a lap of honor and whatever else it might be. It's amazing.
So what we're basically saying is not look at the finish. So when you're coming around those final corners, do not look up and look at the finish line. Repeat in your mind, I will cross that finish line. I will cross that finish line. And it is ahead of you. Because I always say the opposite as well. If you move that finish back 200 meters, everyone would still finish if you told them 200 meters before. But if you let them stop and then said, right, now run another 200, they can't do it. Because the mind has said, done.
I love that aspect of it. I didn't get into it enough as an athlete. I think we all had our own way of doing it, and probably the fact that we're sitting here talking about careers, we must have done some of that pretty well, but nobody taught us how to do it. So actually in the ensuing years, you speak to so many athletes like yourselves and others, and then you speak to non-athletes, ordinary people who are setting incredible challenges from nothing, from nowhere. And you think, where, how, why, and it's the strength of mind. Standing on the start line at the Comrades Marathon, it's 6:30 in the morning in Pietermaritzburg, and looking around, still dark. And I think, we're going to run 55 miles. And I look around me, did I look like an athlete? Anyway, I was all right. And then I look around and I kind of go, wow, I'm not sure he's done much training. Or, I wonder if, look at the shoes that she's wearing. Or, and you in your head, you're thinking, from a kind of physical ability and all that sort of stuff. But you know what? These people are going to get there. Quite a few of them in front of me. So, it's nothing to do with that. It's all to do when you move into that sphere, people's desire to get to the finish line is immense, and it'll help them get through anything.
In London Marathon specifically, coming down the mile, my last one in 2023, I turned and I lost it. Completely lost it in that last 200 meters. Like, I was gasping just because I was almost crying and welling up in myself that I'd got there. and I forgot how to just physically run. And I was almost kind of bounding, limping my way through because I just completely let go of the emotion of because again, you're building up, you're holding on, you're in that fight in those last miles, and you're so in a fight. And I think you and I, Paula, mentioned that kind of like, I think it can be a bit of a boy thing where you sort of let go and almost could just completely relax when you've still got to physically get over the line. And yeah, I did struggle that day to go, not because I just emotionally just completely lost it. Luckily, I wasn't in the sprint, but I think people clocked it as well. A few of the press, you were crying, weren't you, in that last 100? I was like, yeah, I was.
I think the emotions is a huge point, that people do need to be ready for the emotional impact of the London Marathon, because it isn't like really any other race in terms of the emotional impact that it will have on you when you're turning those final couple of corners and you know that you've done it. And that's why Steve and I have the privilege of sitting in the very best place that you can do as you turn onto that final stretch in front of Buckingham Palace, and just seeing the realization hit people's faces that they have done it. So yeah, keep that, channel that as energy, and keep going through that finish line.
I think the same tip you give to, some of the elites as well. The elation of the finish line is way greater than any other emotion you'll have at the end. But the enthusiasm at the beginning can sometimes get in the way of a performance. So just those first 5 or 6 miles, just kind of to have a date with Cutty Sark. And that date with Cutty Sark is, I'm just going to enjoy this first bit until I get there. And then I'm going to start racing, as it were. You're not going to lose much time. You're much better off going a little bit slower than a little bit quicker there. So if you are ahead of schedule, once you've got those first kind of quick 3 miles out the way, then peg it back a little bit. You'll enjoy the race much more, and you'll probably run quicker as well. So yeah, don't get too excited too soon.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We are very proud and grateful to partner with Children with Cancer UK to bring you this special series. And in this episode, we are going to hear from Becky Ray, who is coordinator for the charity's London Marathon team. And she will highlight the benefits of choosing to run for this cause, such as their weekly training support, cheer points on race day, and of course, the amazing podcast that they're giving you to support you out there. And last but not least, a post-race party, which we are expecting to see you all at. So good luck to everybody out there running for the charity. And Becky will also share how you can apply to join next year's team.
Hi, I'm Becky, and I look after our amazing London Marathon team at Children with Cancer UK. If you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably running the London Marathon in just a couple of months' time. At Children with Cancer UK, we have one of the largest teams out on the course on race day. But as part of our team, our amazing runners get access to our monthly online training calls, in-person training days, and support on the day are awesome cheer points and a post-race party where they'll get a massage, hot food, and a hero's welcome. You're part of our community when you join our team, and if you're interested in running with us next year, you can apply when applications open on marathon weekend. Good luck to everybody running in a couple of months' time. We can't wait to cheer you on.
Thank you very much to Becky and to everybody running for Children with Cancer UK and everybody working for the charity and helping all the runners prepare for race day. To donate to Children with Cancer UK or to find out more about the incredible work that they do, there is a link in the description. And that is, I'm afraid, all that we've got time for. Please don't forget to email us your questions to hello@paulasrunpod.com or messages on Instagram @paulasrunpod. Paula's Marathon Run Club is a Viral Tribe entertainment production, and we will join you next week with some great post-marathon recovery to get rid of sore legs.